Welcome to Kansas Ag Report. I'm Ken Rogers. On this week's program, we start a number of interviews that we did recently at the annual Risk Profit Conference at Kansas State University. Up first, Dr. Allan Featherstone, who is the head of the Agricultural Economics Department at Kansas State. We'll get his take, as we do usually every year, on the state of the farm economy. We'll also have updates from Kansas Corn, Kansas Wheat, and the Kansas Farm Bureau, along with the weekly update from the Kansas Livestock Association and market information from Pinion. Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers. Kansas Farm Bureau, a grassroots ag organization representing the state's farm and ranch families since 1919, kfb.org. And the Kansas Wheat Commission, lending in the adoption of profitable innovations from wheat, online at kswheat.com. Agriculture news, very short, just to give you a heads up to some of the folks we'll be talking with in the coming weeks. Robin Reed from K-State will have a update on farmland values. Greg Eibendahl will talk about net cash farm income. We'll also talk with the Farm Management Association. Lavelle Windsor will talk. And we'll also have one of the newest things at K-State. The Farm and Ranch transition has a new executive director. So all those things coming up, as well as an update with what's going on with a very successful Kansas company called Hitchpin, as they are really trying to put people together when it comes to drought relief, if you have hay or need hay or other supplies. So those things coming up throughout the next month. Stay with us, Dr. Allan Featherstone, in just a moment.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
What if U.S. soybean meal were more than a commodity? If seed companies and the soybean checkoff built a better variety? That future is here. The time is now. To meet end-user demands, the soybean checkoff is investing in the compositional quality of soybeans, including meal. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.
Next time you see a beautiful field of corn, reach out and thank the farmers who work tirelessly to raise corn for livestock feed, renewable fuels, and exports to feed a growing world population. The farmers on the Kansas Corn Commission work for Kansas Corn with grower-funded checkoff dollars that support foreign and domestic market development, research, promotion, and education to expand opportunities for Kansas farmers. To learn more, visit kscorn.com.
Many seed companies claim to offer the latest genetics, but how many have tested those genetics in soils just like yours? The Oldie Seed Know to Grow research program has fully tested the latest seed genetics in soils that are right in your neighborhood. The Oldie Seed Know to Grow program can recommend the best performing hybrids from technologies like Enlist, Extend, and LibertyLink that will optimize the yield and profit of every acre on your farm. Contact Oldie Seed today.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by Kansas Grain Sorghum, growers working together. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org. Grass and Grain, online or in the mail, keeping Kansas farmers informed for over 60 years. grassandgrain.com. And we're joined by Dr. Allan Featherstone, who is the head of the Ag Economics Department at Kansas State University. Dr. Featherstone, always great to catch up with you.
Yep, thanks.
This is kind of our yearly kind of state of the way you and your folks see the ag economy at the Risk Profit Conference. So this has been quite an interesting year.
It certainly had, certainly coming off the incomes of 2021, where the Kansas Farm Management numbers showed an income of $300,000. It's been kind of a roller coaster with the invasion of Ukraine on the February 24th, with a big run-up in prices, and then as we move through the summer, kind of a decline in prices. But 2022, I think, will be a good year. And it's going to be especially important in terms of when producers made purchases of the major inputs, primarily fertilizer. In terms of fertilizer purchases before the 15th of February, while they were probably painful then to pay, the prices have increased quite a bit after that, and they have come down a little bit more recently, but they're still quite a bit higher than they were in December. And so producers that purchased inputs before the end of the year or early in January and February probably have reasonable priced inputs and probably will make profit. And the same with diesel fuel. Anything, if there are fuel contracts that were purchased ahead of time for delivery for 2022 to meet the cropping needs, the expense structure will be higher than it was in 2021, but not substantially. If you look at those that did make those purchases, certainly they've been subject to higher diesel prices and higher fertilizer prices.
Well, that's been something that we have talked about. There's been a lot of discussion of looking at next year and will they hold off a little bit on some of those fertilizer prices to see if we do get a break based on all these outside influences. The one thing that's not really included this year is what we saw the last couple of years, and that was some COVID payments or some of those other supports that we typically haven't seen.
That is correct in terms of the COVID payments are essentially done. There is maybe a little bit with regards to the bill that was just passed by Congress that could be available for producers. Whether or not that's going to be attractive for producers with regards to how that bill is implemented certainly will be an issue. But I think it is important to realize that if you start looking at 2023 prices, they're still up there. To give a little bit of an indication, last year when the wheat crop was going in, when they set the crop insurance prices, it was about $7. It's about $8.50, and so essentially you're looking at $1.50 more. Corn's about the same. Soybeans is down a little bit, but again, the pricing opportunities are there for 2023. It'll be interesting to see where and how producers adjust to the new input environment.
Dr. Allan Featherstone is the head of the Agriculture Economics Department at Kansas State University. Let's take a break. We'll come back and discuss more of kind of the state of the ag economy here in Kansas in just a moment.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Livestock Association, supporting members' business interests and meeting consumer demands. KLA.org. Oldie Seed Farms, carrying soil-specific seed. Find them on the web at oldieseed.com. That's OHLDE seed.com. And Kansas Corn, building the future at kansascorn.com.
Grain sorghum is one of the most important cereal crops worldwide, and Kansas leads the nation in its production. Over the years, sorghum has been either exported, used in animal feed domestically, or for other industrial uses. Recently, its use in the ethanol market has seen tremendous growth, with 30% of domestic sorghum typically going to ethanol production. Kansas Grain Sorghum is committed to sorghum research, market development, and education. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org.
And Dr. Allan Featherstone, the head of the Ag Economics Department at K-State, is joining us. We caught up with him at the Risk Profit Conference in Manhattan, looking at the kind of the state of the ag economy. Right before we went to break, we talked about 2023. Boy, I'm hearing a lot of folks say, okay, we may have a little bit of drop-off late this year, but hold on to your hat for 2023. Maybe you're not quite as pessimistic as some.
I'm probably not quite as pessimistic as some in terms of, and part of it is if you really look at the cost structure of your enterprises, to give an indication, kind of an average fuel bill per acre in Kansas in 2021 was about $14. And again, you don't want to pay double, but if you ended up paying double, that adds $14 per acre. And if you're looking at wheat or corn or something like that, it's not good, but it's not drastic. Fertilizer, I think, is a little bit more difficult to deal with in that a lot of those will be about $70 per acre with regards to fertilizer costs before the run-up. And so obviously double there, you're talking about a lot more bushels or a lot more price needed to offset that. I think there will be opportunities, at least for a year or two, and we've done this in the past, where we've maybe mined a little bit with regards to the P and K. The N is not so easy to do, but there is the opportunity to kind of use what's in the soil for a year or two to get by. But again, it's important to realize the revenue side is very important, and so if we get a little bit more moisture in terms of the drought will end at some point in Kansas, and get those yields up, and I don't think the situation in Ukraine is resolved, and so I think there's still going to be pretty strong output prices with regards to that, and so it's not probably going to be like 2021, but it's probably not going to be like some of the depression years that we've had in the sector.
Well, let's talk about Congress and some of the things that they have come up with, IRA and some other acronyms of different programs. A lot of money is going back into agriculture through the Natural Resource Conservation Service, some of these carbon smart or type of farming practices. Have you had a chance to pencil that out if you do have good adoption of those, what that could mean to the bottom line? Because it would seem to me some of those may change acre allotments and a lot of different things, and maybe those payments coming from the government aren't the same as what you could get from cash grains.
I think certainly that's the big thing that each producer will have to look at is just how it will affect their operation. I think it's going to be very differential with regards to producers. In some respects, I think we've kind of went through with this with the MFP and with the COVID type payments. They tend to be ad hoc. It'll be interesting to see in terms of whether or not they continue or even are delivered in terms of there will be an election at the end of the year, and things could change, just like they changed in the last election. And so I think there's a lot of uncertainty there. To me, I think the key thing to remember is Kansas is very much a producer of commodities for the world, and there's still a hungry world out there. And so I think people will need to decide in terms of whether or not the changes in order to get a payment are going to outweigh the agriculture that feeds the world. And if you look at supply and shocks, and if you look at what's going on in Ukraine, while they've finally started exporting some of last year's crops, it's not clear what's going to happen to this year's crops. And just a lot of uncertainties there, which eventually, I think, will change trade patterns, and I think there will be opportunities for U.S. farmers to export their commodities.
Before we wrap up, I just want to talk a little bit about livestock, and one of those that is a continuing evolving story is some of these regional harvesting plants for beef. Amarillo, North Platte, Nebraska, Iowa, some regional ones. Kansas is one of the top feeding states.
where does this all come together for the Kansas beef producer?
I think that's a very open question, and one of the things we're actually kind of in the middle of a study kind of looking at this with regards to just where demand is going to be for beef, where they can source it all the way back to the producer. Certainly if individuals are willing to pay a premium, there may be opportunities for these longer term. But I think it's all going to come down to the consumer. One of the things I think that's probably working against this from a consumer perspective is with the food inflation, whether or not they're going to want to pay a premium on top of the premium they're paying for the inflation to have that locally sourced type product that will likely come through more of these regional type plants. And so there are investments there. There is an opportunity or a desire to diversify the supply chain such that within the pandemic, when certain plants closed down, that had big ramifications with regards to where the producers can market their product. But I think it's very much of an open question, and we may end up seeing a different result because of the inflation that we've seen than we would have seen without the inflation. And so without the inflation, I think consumers probably would have been willing to pay for a premium for that. With inflation, I think some consumers may back off, and their budget may be stretched such that they will go to a product that is more affordable.
Last question then, is there anything else that is on your horizon as we look at the end of this year or into 2023 and beyond that the producers should be aware of?
Certainly Farm Bill will start heating up in terms of, I think probably the big thing I would encourage producers to do, whether or not they contact individual representatives directly or through commodity groups, is keep that input in there. In terms of crop insurance, I think is pretty important for a lot of producers, and it is something that sometimes people want to adjust a little bit, and so I think putting that input into the process will be pretty important. I think the other thing is I think the geopolitical considerations, which are way beyond the control of the Kansas producer, are still going to be out there in terms of what happens with China and Taiwan. I think are pretty important. I think in terms of looking at where that conflict with Ukraine progresses and is going to be extremely important, and whether or not that just is contained within the current sphere or not. But a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unknowns, and there are those geopolitical uncertainties that just seem to be popping up more and more across the globe.
Absolutely. Dr. Featherstone, always appreciate your insights, and a lot of the things that come out of the Ag Economics Department and some of your thoughts are on agmanager.info.
That is correct. In terms of if you want to keep up as things happen and unravel, agmanager.info is a good source of information. All
right. Have a great school year as well.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Dr. Allan Featherstone, heads up the Ag Economics Department at Kansas State University, has joined us. We'll have more coming up in just a moment.
Next time you see a beautiful field of corn, reach out and thank the farmers who work tirelessly to raise corn for livestock feed, renewable fuels, and exports to feed a growing world population. The farmers on the Kansas Corn Commission work for Kansas Corn with grower-funded checkoff dollars that support foreign and domestic market development, research, promotion, and education to expand opportunities for Kansas farmers. To learn more, visit kscorn.com.
Hi, this is Bill Johnston with Kansas Corn, and we've provided a lesson about creating soil or how soil forms. So I'd like to give you a little visual to go along with that. First of all, we need the ingredients for soil. One of the first ingredients is parent material. rocks. We're going to put these rocks in our pan, and we're going to let biological, chemical, and physical reactions begin to break down that rock. We're also going to add another vital ingredient, which is living and dead organisms. Drop that in the pan. We're going to add water to this mix. And we're going to stir in air for hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years, until we can produce or create soil that we can grow crops on to feed the world. And it's the farmer's responsibility to protect and conserve this soil.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
Members of the next generation of flour millers and commodity buyers from operations in Morocco, Algeria, Egypt, and Oman discussed the science behind the hard red winter wheat crop as part of a 12-day tour in Idaho, Kansas, and North Dakota. The team was comprised of future industry decision makers. Some attendees were students and had part-time jobs in their family's flour mills to prepare them to take over from their parents. U.S. Wheat used this opportunity to introduce information about the U.S. grain marketing system at an early stage in the team's careers. Overall, the Middle East/North African regions import primarily hard red winter wheat in addition to soft white and soft red winter wheat. However, the region is composed of more than 30 countries, meaning there is a wide variety in the sophistication of local flour milling operations and wheat importation. In these countries, imports depend heavily on domestic wheat production as well as crop quality from geographically closer suppliers. As a result, U.S. wheat exports to these countries fluctuate greatly from year to year, although these countries are consistent buyers of U.S. durum. The team spent time in Kansas learning about hard red winter production at the USDA Center for Grain and Animal Health Research. The team discussed how USDA scientists in the hard red winter wheat genetics unit focus on different diseases that affect the wheat plant, including leaf rust, stem rust, or fusarium head blight. The team toured the grain science complex of Kansas State University, including the Kansas Wheat Innovation Center, IGP Institute, and Hal Ross Flour Mill. Participants received an overview of how U.S. wheat classes are graded, including a hands-on grading practicum. The team also visited Research Productions Company in Salina.
What if U.S. soybean meal were more than a commodity? If seed companies and the soybean checkoff built a better variety? That future is here. The time is now. To meet end-user demands, the soybean checkoff is investing in the compositional quality of soybeans, including meal. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission, the soybean checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.
Grain sorghum is one of the most important cereal crops worldwide, and Kansas leads the nation in its production. Over the years, sorghum has been either exported, used in animal feed domestically, or for other industrial uses. Recently, its use in the ethanol market has seen tremendous growth, with 30% of domestic sorghum typically going to ethanol production. Kansas Grain Sorghum is committed to sorghum research, market development, and education. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org.
High school students across Kansas and Kansas City are encountering science-based facts about beef production in their classrooms thanks to the Checkoff-funded Beef Certificate Program. The initiative equips family and consumer sciences food classes and Pro-Start programs with funds to purchase beef to use in classrooms and lesson plans to guide teachers and students through discussions on all facets of beef production. The Beef Certificate program reached more than 15,000 students in more than 100 middle and high schools in 44 Kansas counties during the 2021 through 2022 school year. Reimbursement in ProStart programs allows the curriculum to also reach students who have expressed strong interest in the restaurant and food service industry. According to Kansas Beef Council Director of Nutrition, Abby Hadari, the Beef Certificate program is an invaluable resource for educators and students alike. She said educators and consumers often turn to other less factual resources to learn about beef production. But thanks to this checkoff-funded resource, students and educators are receiving the true story about how beef is produced, while also learning how to prepare beef dishes at home. For more information on the Beef Certificate program, visit kansasbeef.org.
Kansas Corn reminds you that E15 fuel is the right choice for every kind of driver. For the car enthusiast, E15 has higher octane. For the thrifty driver, E15 is priced lower than regular unleaded. For the nature lover, E15 provides cleaner air. For the shopper who buys local, E15 has more ethanol from our Kansas corn farms. Choose E15 for a higher octane, lower price, cleaner American fuel. Message from the Kansas Corn Commission. Learn more at kscorn.com.
Good morning, I'm Darren Banbacter with Pinion Risk Management. Corn and beans remain extremely volatile. The August WASDE report dropped trendline yield for corn along with domestic and world carryouts. They increased the bean yield and production along with domestic and world carryouts. The wheat numbers as a whole landed safely in the expected ranges and remain consolidated on the charts. In my opinion, the report was pretty tame, but if I were to pick a topic of concern, it would be the lack of export demand. Looking to the weather, some much needed rains were confirmed early this week, and the forecast has shifted to cooler and a little wetter for the second half of August. In economic news, many believe inflation could have peaked here in the States, but we still remain at very elevated levels. Looking to the calendar and charts over the last several years, the next 30 to 45 days for corn and beans have shown a tendency to trend lower. Several factors are at play as September contracts roll to November and harvest pressure picks up. Weather will still be the wild card as beans try to fill and later planted corn looks to finish out. Technically, corn and beans broke their uptrend line that began on July 22nd, opening the potential for additional downside risk. If you have questions about the markets or some specific questions about your operation, give us a call at 888-452-8751. I'm Darren Banbacter. Be safe and have a great week.
That's our show this week. Be social with us at kansasagreport.net or our social media channels. I'm Ken Rogers. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Kansas Corn reminds you that E15 fuel is the right choice for every kind of driver. For the car enthusiast, E15 has higher octane. For the thrifty driver, E15 is priced lower than regular unleaded. For the nature lover, E15 provides cleaner air. For the shopper who buys local, E15 has more ethanol from our Kansas corn farms. Choose E15 for a higher octane, lower price, cleaner American fuel. Message from the Kansas Corn Commission. Learn more at kscorn.com.
What if U.S. soybean meal were more than a commodity? If seed companies and the soybean checkoff built a better variety? That future is here. The time is now. To meet end-user demands, the soybean checkoff is investing in the compositional quality of soybeans, including meal. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.